Joe Patrick, Dirty South Soccer. Nice to see you guys again. It's been about a week, so it's time to catch up, and MLS play is almost back, so we'll get us ready for that. And then we also have a mailbag, which we'll get to at the end. But before we get into all that stuff, let's just kind of recap what's been going on with Atlanta United in the U.S. Open Cup. Of course, if you're watching this, you know that they've advanced to the quarterfinal stage. They defeated the Columbus Crew, they defeated the Charleston Battery, and they did so in both games on the back of Brandon Vazquez braces. So you have to wonder, is Brandon Vazquez, has he surpassed Mario Williams as Atlanta United's primary backup striker? I mean, Vazquez has been hurt most of this season. That's why he hasn't really featured for the first team at all, even on the bench. So it'll be interesting to see if these performances in the U.S. Open Cup have kind of vaulted him over, possibly past Mario Williams. It'll be interesting to find out. Atlanta United will play the winner of FC Cincinnati and St. Louis, who play tonight as I'm recording this. And that game will be played at Kennesaw State Stadium, Fifth Third Bank Stadium. I know that announcement, that news was disappointing to fans after the game against Columbus last night. But I would just urge everybody to get out there, go give it a shot. You know, you may have been there for Atlanta United 2 game or the CONCACAF Champions League games against Herediano earlier this season. And if you haven't been out there, just give it a shot because it's a really cool place to watch a game. You get really close to the players. You know, the stands, it's just a smaller stadium, so you're closer to the field. I think usually the players are more likely to come over and maybe sign some autographs or something as well. I know the Atlanta United 2 team does that quite regularly. And you just get to smell hot dogs and stuff. You know, that's a natural aphrodisiac, so that's always a plus as well. So bring your significant other to the game, and then you can have a good night afterwards as well. But go to the game, try it out. Also, MLS, it's back in a week, and it's going to be back with a vengeance. We talked so much about the stretch that Atlanta United went through before this kind of international break where they played 8 games in 28 days or whatever it is. This upcoming stretch is going to be actually even worse now that Atlanta United has a U.S. Open Cup fixture as well. They will be playing 8 games in 26 days. 7 of those will be MLS games. And 3 of those games, probably 3 of those MLS games, those first 3 are going to be without Josef Martinez, who is, of course, away at Copa America. Could be longer, could be more like 4 games if Venezuela actually wins one of its first knockout game, which could happen. Venezuela is a talented team, and they kind of have a unique team where they can upset a team. They're kind of like a cup set type of team. So that could happen, and if that happens, Atlanta's going to need a guy like Brandon Vazquez or Mario Williams to step up in that role to replace Josef Martinez. So keep an eye on the Copa America for Josef Martinez status. Luckily, he's the only Atlanta United player that's been participating in this international action. And 2, he hasn't really even been playing a ton. The Venezuelan manager, Dudamel, I think is his name, he prefers Solomon Rondon to play alone up top as a center forward. So Josef has kind of been coming on, as a substitute or, coming on later in games, hasn't been playing 90 minutes. So at least that's good for his overall fitness, his overall kind of physical status when he re-enters Atlanta United going forward. So that's about it. Let's get into the mailbag. I'm going to divert my eyes from the screen for a second so I can read. We just have a whole smorgasbord of questions, so we're just going to run through them. The Bill H asks, what is the correct temperature to set your thermostat in the summer? So I have actually very strong opinions on this, but I will admit it does kind of depend on whether you live in a house or whether you live in an apartment. Do you live with other people? Myself, I live in an apartment by myself, and so I crank the temperature to 68 degrees at night, which I think I find most men want it to be freezing cold at night when they sleep, and that's when I actually use the air conditioning, is when I'm sleeping. Other than that, I kind of just crank it up, especially if I'm not away. I'll just turn off my air conditioning altogether. That's probably really bad for my home, but who cares? I don't own it. So let's see, what else do we have here? Allison Schwab, one of our writers at Dirty South Soccer, says, why does Columbus hate Breck Shea? Yeah, so apparently there were a bunch of Columbus Crew fans in the U.S. Open Cup game in Columbus that were booing when Justin Meram came off for Breck Shea, and then Justin Meram went on Twitter and kind of was like, hey, what the hell? I played, X amount of years for you guys, I love you guys, whatever. Turns out they were booing Breck Shea, not Justin Meram for coming off. So, and I don't know why they hate Breck Shea. Maybe it's his blonde dreadlocks. That's probably it. Let's see. Mats Hummels or LGP? It's Matt Hummels. Why does Berhalter? Sorry, that was Harrison Lee. This is Aaron Briggs. Why does Berhalter hate Atlanta? Good question. I don't know why, especially Darlington Nagbe didn't get called into the U.S. men's national team. I feel like he so obviously would help this team right now. But I'm not really complaining because I would prefer him to not be spending his time on international duty when he really needs the R&R after playing so many minutes for Atlanta United this season. And then Miles Robinson is another guy who has a very solid claim to be on that team. And in fact, this is new reporting that, from what I understand, the club was more likely than not anticipating him being on that team. Of course, he was named to the provisional list, the provisional roster, which I think was 40 players. And I think that the club was expecting him to actually be going. But for whatever reason, it turns out they didn't call him in. And again, I think Miles Robinson is a guy that is obviously vastly underrated outside of Atlanta and could really help the U.S. men's national team. Sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of sickness here. Okay, here's a big one. A Clark Kent type says, how would you fix MLS schedule in order to work out better for the players and also the rest of the soccer world? And I have to say that if I had the answer to that question, I would not be working as a part-time contractor for SB Nation. I think I said that correct legally. I don't know what I am at this point, but yeah, I mean, I don't really have an answer to that question. I do think that for MLS going forward, I think it makes complete sense to break the division down. If they want to go to, like, you know, over 30 teams, to break it down into like an East-West so you're not doing so much West Coast travel. I think that the travel is just a big thing in MLS. The way the schedule is and the way that, you know, the weather is here, it's kind of going to be impossible to play in the winter in the Northeast. Like, you just can't play through that kind of snow. It's too impossible, and it's more like the heat is bad, but it's more doable than playing in you know, trying to keep snow off the field. So I don't think the schedule is ever going to change with MLS getting onto a FIFA schedule, but I think that, you know, if you can make the travel more accommodating, especially, you know, allowing teams to charter more flights if they would like to do that, all those things will kind of help. But it's always going to be tough. And that's not just MLS dealing with it. It's obviously leagues around the world. Let's see. Is Rob as shocked as I am that FDB posted a lineup last night that appeared to show an intent to win the game? That comes from Trevin. I don't know if that's something Rob has been banging on about. Maybe he has. I don't know. But I was surprised he fielded such a strong lineup. Of course, Ezequiel Barco came right back into the team since returning from Argentina duty at the U20 World Cup. So that was good to see, and I thought he played pretty well. And I expect big things of him when he enters MLS play again. I think he's going to drive this team forward. We'll just finish on this one. Do I like strawberries or blackberries more? Interesting question. Good question. Used to like strawberries way more, like when I was a kid. Now, blackberries. They're less messy. You can eat them in one bite. Strawberries a little tougher. You have to use more of like your hands. I mean, obviously you need hands with blackberries, but you can just pop them in. Yeah, so that's about it. Also, one more thing about before we leave here about the game being at Kennesaw, the next U.S. Open Cup game. I have heard reports that field is very slippery. So it's not the greatest for players. It's, like I said, it's a great venue for fans, but I have had some reports from people who have participated on that field that it is the footing is not good. We saw a bunch of slipping against the Charleston Battery, and of course that field was converted to a hybrid surface, a hybrid like grass turf surface a couple years ago. So something to keep an eye on whenever the team plays there, as they will in the next round against St. Louis or FC Cincinnati. So we've gone on long enough now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you guys in the next one.